So let's talk about your application. It probably worked great when you first launched, right? But now, as you've grown, that solid foundation might be starting to feel a little more like a ball and chain. If that sounds even vaguely familiar, well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to break down the playbook for moving from that old monolith to a modern microservices architecture.
Wow. I mean, this quote just nails the feeling, doesn't it? It's that pit in your stomach, high-stress cycle where a single deployment could bring the whole thing crashing down. The risk is massive, the process feels like a total black box, and the entire team is just crossing their fingers, hoping for the best.
If you're a tech leader, I'm willing to bet this hits pretty close to home. It's such a common story for companies that are scaling up. That anxiety before a release, that's a giant, flashing red light telling you your architecture is struggling to keep up with your business.
And that brings us to what you could call the monolith time bomb. You know, it's that tricky spot where the very system that got you to where you are today is now the single biggest thing holding back your growth, your innovation, and your speed. This right here, this is the heart of the problem. Inside that one giant system, everything is tangled together like a big ball of yarn. So a seemingly simple feature change can have these crazy, unexpected ripple effects. And if you need to scale up one little part for more traffic, guess what? You have to scale the entire clunky system. And here's the kicker. This isn't just a coding problem. It's an organizational one. It's slowing your whole business down.
Which leads us to probably the most critical mindset shift you have to make. The smartest organizations out there, they don't see this as just another tech upgrade. No, they see it for what it really is, a fundamental business transformation.
And this comparison just lays it all out. The old way of thinking, it's getting distracted by the latest shiny tools, thinking this is just a big code cleanup project. But the successful approach, the new way, it's all about focusing on what actually matters to the business. Are we deploying faster? Is our system more reliable? Are our teams able to work on their own and get stuff done? Those are the questions that matter.
Okay, so how do you actually do this? That brings us to the migration playbook. Let's break down the step-by-step guide for making this journey a real success.
All right, before you write a single line of new code, you have to nail these 3 foundational steps. First up, assess everything. And I mean everything. Map out every single dependency, every integration point. Most migrations fail because of some forgotten connection hiding in a corner. Second, you got to define your boundaries using what's called domain-driven design. Fancy term, but it just means you're creating services around real business functions like payments or user profiles, not just random tech layers. And finally, get an API gateway in place. This becomes your new front door, handling security and routing all in one spot.
Now for the really hard part, data. The absolute golden rule here is the database per service pattern. Every single microservice needs to completely own its own data. That's how you get true independence. But of course, that creates a new problem. How do you keep everything consistent? Well, that's where clever patterns like Sagas come into play. Think of them as a coordinator for complex tasks, making sure that a process that touches multiple services either finishes completely or is safely rolled back.
Your thinking on security and operations has to totally evolve too. The old model of just building a strong wall around your system, that's gone. It just doesn't work here. You need what's called a zero-trust architecture, where nothing is trusted by default. And instead of just logging things, you need comprehensive observability. That's the ability to ask any question of your system and actually trace a single user's request as it hops between a dozen different services. It's like having X-ray vision to find problems instantly.
So how in the world do you replace the old system without a terrifying all-at-once cutover? The answer is one of my favorite concepts, the Strangler Fig Pattern. The analogy is perfect. Just like a fig vine slowly grows around and overtakes a host tree, you build your new services around the edges of your monolith. Over time, you route more and more traffic to the new stuff, gradually starving the old system until, one day, you can just turn it off for good. It's a much safer, phased approach.
Okay, we've covered a ton of tech. Foundations, data, security, patterns. But you could do all of that perfectly, and the whole thing could still fail if you don't address the single most important component of this entire transformation.
Yep, it's about your people, your organizational structure. You need to build small, cross-functional teams that own their services from start to finish. You build it, you run it. This creates a culture of shared responsibility, it gets rid of those bottlenecks between teams, and it gives them the autonomy they need to make decisions and just move fast.
So what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's get into the good stuff, the lessons from the trenches. We're talking real success stories, key numbers, and, importantly, the pitfalls you really need to avoid.
I mean, just look at the giants. Amazon's whole retail empire runs on this idea. It's what lets them handle millions of transactions with all these small, independent teams. And then there's Netflix. They built their entire global streaming service on a microservices architecture designed for insane scale and resilience. They even invented something called chaos engineering, where they literally break things on purpose just to make sure the system can handle it.
And the data absolutely backs this up. On average, companies that do this right have seen a 67% improvement in their incident recovery time. Now just think about that for a second. When something inevitably goes wrong, they can find it and fix it in about a third of the time. That is a massive business advantage.
So the source material actually laid out 11 critical success factors, but we've boiled them down into these 3 main categories. First, you need leadership that provides clear business goals. Second, you need solid processes, which means automating everything you can and sticking to that incremental migration. And finally, you need the right technology. That's the careful data planning, full observability, and zero-trust security we've been talking about.
And hey, if you're wondering if this is all just a passing trend, just look at the market. It's predicted to more than double in the next 5 years alone. This isn't some fad, folks. This is a fundamental shift in how modern, scalable, and secure IT operations are being built. But let's be realistic. This stuff is hard, and a lot of these projects do fail. So what are the traps? Well, the number one killer is trying to do that big bang migration. It almost never works. Other common ways to fail include cheaping out on monitoring tools, which basically leaves you flying blind, ignoring the cultural resistance to new ways of working, and of course, that classic mistake of overlooking one critical dependency during your initial assessment. So, if you take away just one single thing from all of this, let it be this. A microservices migration is not a tech project. It is a business transformation. The technology is just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle that involves your people, your processes, and your entire company culture. Which really leaves us with one final thought. The system you have now, it got you to where you are today, and that is a huge success. You should be proud of that. But as you look to the future, you have to ask the hard question. Is the architecture that powered yesterday's business really ready for the demands of tomorrow?
Thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Check out the next video on this topic, or subscribe to our channel to keep up with our latest explainer videos, live webinars, and other insights into technology solutions.